Airtel is the service provider.
Oh,
Very
I
good.
see.
But
A
it
very
is not
warm
free.
welcome. A very warm welcome to all the panelists and all the audience members. Welcome to the second session on economic relations. This session will be chaired by Ambassador Devare. He was the former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs, and he was also the former Director General of Indian Council of World Affairs. Before I hand over today's proceedings to our chair, just the house rules in order to ensure a smooth functioning of this session. We request all the speakers and panelists to keep their audio on mute while not speaking. In case you are facing connectivity issues, you may switch off the camera and continue on audio mode. Questions can be raised through the raise hand or live chat. And for the audience, you may raise questions by signing in and agreeing to your terms and conditions. So with this, may I request Ambassador Sudhir Devare to kindly give his opening remarks and conduct the proceeding. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Temjen. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Prabir Day for a very generous introduction about me. He's right. I think I first met him some 15 years ago in RIS, and since then I have seen with much interest his great level of activity with respect to economic issues and last few years related to ASEAN issues. I therefore would like to commend this initiative which has been taken by RIS to observe or commemorate this 20 years of Mekong Ganga cooperation, and that this event is being organized in cooperation with the ICWA is a matter of additional satisfaction because I have been associated with both these bodies for a very long time. I am tempted to share with you a sense of personal gratification about Mekong Ganga. Why I am doing so? Because I think Mekong Ganga is a project or is a cooperation, is a setup which has supplemented in a large measure India's look and now act is policy as well as BIMSTEC and related initiatives. I feel somewhat personally connected with Mekong Ganga because exactly 20 years ago, when I was Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, I recall very distinctly the Honorable Foreign Minister of Thailand, Mr. Surin Pitsuwan, came to Delhi to meet with our Foreign Minister, Sri Jaswant Singh. And the conversation was primarily about Mr. Surin Pitsuwan's interest in setting up a body, an organization like Mekong Ganga. And he spoke about this very passionately, and I was sitting with both of them, and we agreed, we immediately felt that this kind of setup will go a long way in building the kind of cooperation which we sought with ASEAN countries, especially the CLMV countries and Thailand. Even the name Mekong Ganga was discussed and finalized during that meeting that we had in South Block in the Ministry of External Affairs. And a couple of months later, there was a meeting, ASEAN meeting in Bangkok, when we were all there. And during that meeting, on the sidelines of the meeting, ministers, foreign ministers of the CLMV countries, as well as Mr. Surin Pitsuwan and our foreign minister, Mr. Jaswant Singh, met, and this Mekong Ganga idea was crystallized. So I wanted to share this genesis of this setup, which goes 20 years ago. And I personally, I feel very happy to see that the seed that was sown that time has now grown into a large tree. The basis or the idea behind this setup was that the deep cultural and civilizational contacts that India has with countries of Thailand, as well as these four countries of CLMV region, can be built upon to expand into economic, socio-cultural, and industrial, educational, and all other aspects. Till then, CLMV countries were, of course, they had by that time joined the ASEAN, but they were not receiving the same kind of focus as they all deserve to. And even in India was by that time dialogue partner and so on. Our focus with these countries is to be part of the larger discussion on ASEAN. So India also was very keen, given its traditional relations with these countries of Mekong region, to put more emphasis on our cooperation. And we felt that starting with that cultural backdrop, strongly supported by our common heritage of Buddhism, will help in building links in tourism, pilgrimage, social travel, and beyond that into solid economic cooperation. So I think this is how the original idea was, and soon it sort of got expanded into precise and concrete areas of economic cooperation. Well, over the years, as I see the figures now, the trade, which was around that time about $1 billion, has now, I think 2019 figures shows it has risen to $25 billion, which is really a substantial increase from that time. We had traditional areas of exports and interaction, economic interaction, principally with respect to education, communication, connectivity, culture, I think primary products or engineering products from India, products from these countries. The time has now come to diversify them. And I think this COVID has also given us a new insight, a new opportunity. The whole area of healthcare, pharmaceuticals, medical equipment, and in addition to that, new areas like MSMEs, agriculture, science and technology. I think the field for cooperation between Mekong Ganga countries and India is really unlimited. And I think this is the now time when we complete 20 years, we should look ahead for much wider canvas between India and the Mekong region. Secretary East this morning mentioned that some 23 projects which have been finalized even during this year. I think we should really proceed with them at reasonable speed. On connectivity, unfortunately, there has been a long delay in completion of several of our projects, be it Kaladan or be it the trilateral highway between India, Myanmar and Thailand. And we have also talked about for a long time the extension to the east of this highway to Laos and beyond in Vietnam. I think the connectivity projects must be completed within a certain time deadline. They have gone on for too long. I remember in the year 2000, the inauguration of the Friendship Highway was done by our foreign minister at Tamu More, and 20 years later, that expressway, that highway is still not complete. So I think the need for timely implementation cannot be overemphasized. Similarly, I recall the figure I think was quite impressive about our lines of credit, some $400 million. But even there, I think we need to really find out how much of that credit has been utilized by these countries. And if not, what are the hurdles, what are the obstacles that come in the way. Yesterday, my colleague and fellow ICWA Director General Rajiv Bhatia, we were both discussing what are the mechanisms under which economic cooperation between Mekong Ganga region and India can be really expedited. Do we have only bilateralism to go by, or do we have any institutional mechanism within this MGC? And I think it seems that we have a ministerial group which oversees this from time to time, but a regular mechanism needs to be developed which will enable timely or rather regular review of the situation between the region and India, understand the issues and try to find out solutions to this, because 25 billion is fine, but that is not adequate at all given the potential and the volume that really can be expanded in between us. So I think there are several ideas. I'm really happy that we have such eminent speakers, both from India as well as from the region, who have joined us today, and they are all going to share their views and perspectives on this very important, very positive kind of cooperation that India and Mekong region are embarked upon. So with these words, I would like to invite Mr. Madhurjya Kumar Dutta as the first speaker to tell us about his own views on this. He is the director of the Mekong Institute in Thailand. So, Mr. Dutta, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Ambassador Devare. Can I ask my PowerPoint slides to kindly share on the screen? Yeah, please. Yeah. Okay, can you please enlarge it? Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, again, Ambassador Devare, panelist team and organizing team, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. A very good welcome to all of you. My colleague, Ms. Chanchita, also joins me in this discussion today because she also contributed part in my paper. Today, in this presentation, I have 5 sections. First, I will briefly talk about the Mekong-India relations. I think most of the speakers will also touch upon that. I will just highlight a few salient points. And I will make an assessment of the sub-regional cooperation frameworks in the Mekong country. This refers to our recent study, which we have conducted for Japan government to make an assessment, a survey of the 14 frameworks. I will just highlight in the background of MGC. And also I will look into the MGC status and the issues. I will not elaborate much because of the time constraint. And we'll also look into how to make MGC more operational. And finally, a few concluding points. The focus of my presentation is basically, as I said, a brief assessment of Mekong Ganga cooperation against Mekong-India trade relations, trade and investment relations, and Mekong sub-regional frameworks, and to make specific recommendation to take MGC to a higher level. Next slide, please. Next, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, okay. As you see there, no, the slide before. Back, yes. As you see, there are growing linkages through trade, investment, through different agreements of cooperation, which are linked across various sectors and areas by way of mainly these 6 sectors, 6 programs. On connectivity, basically on infrastructure, digital, people to people, and also logistics, MSME development, trade facilitation, human resource development, regional value chains, and free trade agreements. We can sum up in these 6 categories. However, we see there are some unfinished businesses and relationship between MGC and India is below its potential. Ambassador Devare also mentioned about that. This is because of some limited progress on agreements and cooperation, and also due to less trade as compared to China. And we see that there is a trade trade balance more in favor of the Mekong countries. Next slide, please. You will notice that both export and imports of goods between each of the Mekong countries and India grew between 2010 and until 2018. Mekong-India bilateral trade in goods was mostly dominated by Thailand and India, and also Vietnam and India bilateral trade during this period. But if we compare to Mekong-China bilateral trade, Mekong-India bilateral goods trade is relatively low. There are obvious reasons. I will not go into those. But if you look into trade in goods between each of the Mekong country and China was much, much higher than the trade in goods with India in 2018. However, overall, the trade in goods between Mekong country with India was about 1/9 of trade goods in with China in 2018. This is a big gap, I would say, but there is good potential. But if we look into the size of Mekong and India's economy and the high potential, it's still the trade is quite low. So there's a lot of scope, room for improvement here. Next slide, please. I think the slide before. Anyway, Mekong India trade in goods was basically dominated by intermediate goods, both in 2010 and in 2018. And next slide, please. Though the share of intermediate goods in total trade reduced slightly, that's from 67% in 2010 to around 65% in 2018, trade in intermediate goods more than doubled from around $700 in 2010 until 2018. The breakdown of bilateral trade into broad economic categories helps really in understanding the end use of goods that are being traded between the Mekong countries and India. Higher shares and values in trade and also in intermediate goods indicate that Mekong countries and India are intimately linked in each other's value chain and are closely linked to regional value chain. And these linkages has grown between 2010 and 2018. Next slide, please. Overall, the Mekong countries maintain a positive trade balance with India, which doubled between 2010 and 2018. Thailand maintained a positive trend with positive trade balance in 2010 until 2018, while Vietnam showed a negative trade balance in 2010, but however turned positive in 2018. So share of Mekong countries' trade with India and their total trade with the world varied between 1.2% for Cambodia and to 8.1 for Myanmar in 2018. So there's much variation. All Mekong countries' trade with India was about 4.7% of their trade with the world in 2018. So this basically shows a reflection how much we are trading. There's a trade between the Mekong countries and India. Next slide, please. Yes. ASEAN-India FTA goods agreement, which was signed in 2010, gains for India has been limited so far. The balance in goods trade has turned into ASEAN's favor. So if you look even in RCEP negotiation, as we know that India is not a party to the in-principle agreement, which was reached in last year in November 2019, the remaining RCEP countries are keen on joining India, keen on India joining the agreement, but India is unlikely to join for different reasons. India and Thailand early harvest scheme for FTA, which was signed in 2003, negotiations are yet to be concluded. So there have been concerns regarding the increased export from Thailand in India. So the two countries have already abolished around duties on 82 items under the early harvest, which was launched in 2004. And initial phase of the proposed comprehensive FTA, which is still to be upgraded for a full-fledged arrangement for reduction and elimination of duties on about 90% of goods between the countries, still to be done. The FTA would also cover opening up of trade in services, an area of interest to India, as we know. Issues like cut in duties on number of products and movement of professionals are yet to be resolved by both sides. So this needs to be activated as well. So there are also concerns in India about the worsening trade balance with ASEAN Mekong countries, and also the stiff competition from Mekong countries, noted particularly from Vietnam for the products of India's export interest. Therefore, the fate of trade agreements look a little bit of bleak at the moment. So this is some kind of the reflection to share with you. Thus, the trade and investment relations, I think, between Mekong sub-region and India have not taken off in an impressive way. As we have noticed, that is lower trade and China agreements not even effective or not even concluded, which I think in turn impacts the MGC Mekong Ganga cooperation progress of the Mekong Ganga program. Can you move to the next slide, please? In the Mekong sub-region, there are nearly 14 sub-regional cooperation frameworks. This is for a relatively small region, which shows the importance of the region in terms of trade, investment, and because maybe because of its strategic location between India and China, and also the Far East. The sub-regional cooperation frameworks in the Mekong region can be classified into these categories. First is on the framework that forms a basic agreement among the Mekong country, which relates to parties, that is on agreement on commercial navigation on Lancang Mekong River between China and the Mekong country. Second category can be classified in terms of which aim for development specifically for CLMV, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam. Then there are frameworks which focus on specific sector like water resource development. And we have the Mekong River Commission framework, ASEAN Mekong Basin Development Cooperation. Then there is another framework which relates to broad membership, much broader ambitions and also scopes, and which focus are mostly led by countries outside the countries of the sub-region, like the Greater Mekong Sub-region Cooperation Program, then ECMEC, Ayurvedi, Chao Phraya Mekong Economic Cooperation Program. Besides that, there are also frameworks which are broad in ambition and are led by countries which are outside the Mekong sub-region, including the Mekong Ganga Cooperation. This is basically to give you an overview in different program sectors, the focus areas of different frameworks in the Mekong region. Next slide, please. So we see that there's a wide variation among the frameworks in terms of scope, the strategies, even the coordination process, and also the funding that has been pulled for the region. This multiplicity, I think this number of these sub-regional frameworks are basically stretching the capacities of the coordinating agencies, which are Ministry of Foreign Affairs, mostly in most cases. And because of the limited manpower, I think the scheduling of meetings and coordination is really a matter of concern at the moment. So an effective coordination and a mechanism to be developed to put up some kind of a secretariat within the region are some of the recommendations that have come out in the studies. And also in terms of connectivity, infrastructure, human resource, capability development, sustainable. So many of these frameworks are basically focusing on similar kind of issues. Issues in terms of like health or maybe on technology are being addressed by few of the frameworks only. Next slide, please. Let's look into MGC Plan of Action, which is aligned, I think, with Greater Mekong Sub-region Long-Term Strategy Plan up to 2020, which will be launched from 2021. And I think the MGC is also much aligned with the GMS Transport Sector Strategy, the ASEAN Economic Community, ASEAN Master Plan of Connectivity, also the ASEAN Plan for SME Development. So I think these are some of the mechanisms which are very strong and active in the region, and MGC is really integrated into these mechanisms. And there are a lot of synergies could possibly be built on. Funding through various projects provided by India as well, disbursement figures are not available. So there is not much publicity, I would say, awareness on the programs and projects being implemented through MGC. So that is one, I think, area that needs to be addressed, because information is the key source for cooperation. That is a bit lacking in terms of MGC program. MGC, as mentioned, like we have 11 new areas under the new plan of action, which is now addressing more specific on economic cooperation through tourism and culture, agriculture and allied sectors, transport and communication, MSME development, water issues, science and technology. So I think these are the new areas which need to be, more deeply intervene in terms of designing projects, particularly regional projects. Next slide, please. In terms of effectiveness, if you look into this, despite its 20 years of existence and one of the oldest mechanisms started in 2020, it's yet to be upgraded to the summit level. If you look into other mechanisms, for example, Lancang Mekong Cooperation started in 2016, already they are into the summit. Even Korea Mekong was already into the summit level, started in 2017. I think there's a lot of scope, I think, our MGC engagement to bring it at a much higher level that will give more visibility to this mechanism. There's also limited access to information on programs and projects, I have mentioned already. So at the moment, I think it is important to have a dedicated website or portal. I think absence of the portal or information point of information is also hurting its visibility. As Ambassador already mentioned, I would also reiterate that the progress in the connectivity projects like Kaladan multimodal project, which has been slow for various regions, including the IMT trilateral highway. I think once these are done, this will be a game changer from the economic perspective, particularly for the northeastern states of India. Next slide, please. The following discussions, I would like to just focus on the MGC plan of action on cooperation sectors that would specifically promote economic relations. I think use of digital platforms is important to provide information on MGC, including its evolution, objectives, strategies, past and current projects, funding, impact of various frameworks. I think it is important to put in those kind of information. Also to build collaborative and form partnership among the business association. If we are looking into trade relationship, I think it's very important that our institutions like FICCI, SOCM need to collaborate more deeply and more engaged with the business associations in the region. Not only the national institutions, also we have agencies like GMS Business Forum, Business Council. They are very active, and I think there's a good scope to build much collaborative programs. Tourism cooperation, I think I would look more in from the perspective of the economic relations. Not only does developing these circuits of promoting tourism between the country, between the region and India, I think it's also important to go for some soft infrastructure also in terms of developing web portal where the tour providers in India as well as from the region can put up e-stores and kind of thing and develop that kind of business linkages. And also twinning of certain cities in India, Gaya with Ayutthaya, probably with Siem Reap. So that kind of twinning of or the sister city concept could be built in to bring in investments and the best practice in many areas.
Mr. Dutta, can you now please wind it up?
Yes. This is I think my almost the final slide. Okay, let me go to the slide on operationalizing the MGC. Let me go to the next slide, maybe. Yeah, I will just run through this. Well, this is another area that we need to enhance cooperation in transport and communication. Extension of the Indian Myanmar Thailand highway and also the Mekong Economic Corridor. I think this will plug the missing links, and the signing of an early harvest scheme on transport facilitation is also important. The proposed Mekong Economic Corridor, I think that should be linked with the economic zones and industrial states in the region. As you are aware that the Thailand is coming up, Thailand mega project is on the Eastern Economic Corridor. So such linkages could definitely bring in a lot of investments between the countries. And in terms of MSME, I would suggest that there's a lot of scope to promote investment forums between the country, product development collaboration, and also linking with our clusters, with the clusters in the Mekong country. Recently, Asian Development Bank has already launched a project that is basically to promote MSME of Mekong countries, particularly Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia, with those in Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and Gujarat. So this type of projects, MGC can look into and build in some kind of collaborative programs to enhance bilateral cooperation. Next slide, please. In this region, we have a couple of dynamic platforms that links MSME. So this could be a link for the Indian MSME, basically to source information and build networking capabilities. These are, this is Lancang Mekong Economic Zone platform, which have nearly 1,000 economic zones on the platform. And the logistic database that is giving information of the logistic companies in the region, including the warehouse, cold chain, etc. So these are kind of the networks, I think, that can easily be accessed by the Indian partners. Next slide, please. So apart from that, there are also the economic corridor databases. These are dynamic platforms which provide a lot of information on the companies. These are having nearly 3,000 to 4,000 company profiles, including provincial profiles, investment profiles, and product showcases, e-commerce, cross-border e-commerce, etc., etc. So Indian MSME can access this information to expand their networking capabilities and access the regional market to source raw material, finished products, R&D collaboration, and others. Next, please. I think for the skill development, there are need for kind of exchange between the clusters, and also build up apprenticeship model between the special economic zones in Mekong region with India, and also information sharing. I have already mentioned OSMEP, that is the Office of Small Medium Enterprise Promotion in Thailand, has already established information desk in certain cities in India. So similar, Indian government under the MGC MSME program can also set up information desk in the region, maybe in the Indian business associations which are in this region. Quick impact project, I think, is a very important element of the MGC program. At the moment, what I have noticed that these are some small, activities being undertaken under the QIP program. It is suggested that this to be linked to certain studies, feasibility studies, so that investment can come in. So if this structure could little bit can change to see that certain baseline studies or investment feasibilities are identified through this quick impact project, that will build in investment opportunities information for the Indian investors as well. Next, please.
So Dutta, sorry, I think, please.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, sorry, I'm done. So finally, I think MGC has the potential to be a game changer in the Mekong India and also ASEAN-India relations. The 20-year of celebration is a great moment for us to enhance the level of cooperation to the summit level, launch new and specific initiative, and speed up the existing projects which are being delayed. Thank you very much. Sorry for the extended time.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Dutta. I think a very comprehensive, survey of the Mekong region and possibilities of trade and economic cooperation with India. I think you have given such valuable information. I think we should be very useful for Indian entrepreneurs and businessmen. And I think earlier we have a portal, the better, because I don't think there is adequate dissemination of information about the opportunities in this region. So yep. Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr.Vo Thi Minh, who is the Deputy Head Department of GMS Studies, Vietnam, and Academy of Social Sciences, Hanoi. Dr.Vo Thi Minh.
Thank you, Dr. Che. Also, thank you, Dr. Dutta. I think for your presentation is so comprehensive. So for my topic, I think that it's a little bit similar to the topic, but I think for the, my recommendation, I think it's not so specific like you. But please listen my presentation now. I don't have PPT like Dr. Dutta, but the topic I present today is changes in trade and investment relation between India and Mekong countries during the period 2020. The topic will analyze the trends and patterns of trade and investment of India with Mekong countries, especially since 2010, when the ASEAN-India Free Trade Area came into effect. Achievement has been more fruitful as a result of ASEAN-India FTA, increased ASEAN integration, Mekong Ganga Cooperation Initiative, and India massive reform. Besides, we also examine the potential and challenges before proposing policy recommendations for stronger cooperation among rising partners in the new context. As we know, after the end of the Cold War, in order to catch up, maintain peace, and expand transnational cooperation, India made important foreign policy adjustments, including its effort to adopt its policy in 1992 and then act its policy in 2014 to intensify its economic relations with the countries of Southeast Asian countries region. As a result, intra-trade and investment flows move more rapidly. Together with the introduction of ASEAN-India FTA in 2010, the ASEAN Economic Community in 2015, and other economic cooperation initiative, and now India has taken several important steps to enhance regional connectivity and promote trade and investment through agreements and projects. First of all, in terms of trends and patterns in India and Mekong trade and investment relation. In terms of trade, into past decade, trade between India and Mekong countries has increased substantially, especially since the implementation of ASEAN-India Trade Agreement in 2010. Total bilateral trade between two sides has increased 10 times from 2003 to 2019. However, an important point what to be noted is that India import from Mekong countries has increased at a higher rate than India export to these countries, resulting in a significant increase in India trade deficit with Mekong countries from about 2 billion in 2010 to more than 4 billion US dollar in 2019. At present, Laos, Thailand, and Vietnam has a trade surplus with India, while Cambodia and Myanmar have a trade deficit. Trade between India and Mekong countries has also been witnessing a composition shift in past year. Intermediate products and finished goods have emerged as a prime commodity in bilateral trade between two sides. India exports to Mekong countries are primarily driven by electrical machinery, pharmacy products, transport, and equipment, while India's major imports are rubber, wood and wood products, and minerals. Despite of improvement in trade relations, India's share of import and export in the market of Mekong countries have been still very low compared to other countries. In 2019, the export value of the Mekong countries to the Indian market account for 2.7% of the total export value of Mekong countries, while the import value from India account for only 1.87% of the total import value. It means that the figure implies that unlocked trade potential between India and Mekong countries is substantially high. Both two sides need to take more steps to further foster trade cooperation to match their potential. That is in terms of trade. In terms of the second, in terms of investment, Mekong markets becoming more attractive for Indian company. Indian investment in the sub-region are on the rise. growing gradually through both joint venture and wholly owned subsidiary route. The major sector for India outward FDI in Mekong countries are manufacturing. It's about 70%. Wholesale, retail, restaurant, and hotel account for 13%. And the last one is agriculture, mining 9%, and construction account 6%. Vietnam among the Mekong countries, Vietnam tend to the luckiest recipients of Indian ODI after taking the first position of Thailand in since 2016. Following Vietnam, Myanmar, and Thailand also received the investment project from India. In Myanmar, India investment mostly focus on infrastructure, energy, pharmacy, and good products. And in Thailand, India investment focus on area of software, agri-chemicals, electric car development, while Indian companies are less active in Cambodia and Laos. In general, in comparison with the rest of ASEAN, Indian investment relation with Mekong countries appear to modest and have a great potential to develop given the complementary nature. That is the overall picture about the trade and the pattern and trend of investment and trade between India and Mekong. And the second, I would like to focus on the challenges and opportunity for trade and investment cooperation between India and Mekong countries. For the challenges, the first one I realized that is the poor connectivity. Poor connectivity is a pressing problem that prevents trade and investment flow between India and Mekong countries. Attempts are being made by own government to enhance physical connectivity, but the overall progress has so far been limited. That is the first one. The second one is the barriers such as exchange rate, volatility, tariff, and non. Also, on bilateral trade make the trade between India and expensive and non-competitive. Currently, there are at least 1,500 products imported from India, which are incurring SBS. It means sanitary and phytosanitary and technical barriers to trade measures by each Mekong countries. The third one is heavy concentration among a small number of firms and sectors, make Indian investment in the Mekong region less attractive in some countries. For instance, Grasim industry alone are responsible for about 71% and 85% of Indian investment in Cambodia and Laos, respectively. In Myanmar, at the top 5 investors account for nearly 97% of Indian investment. It means that mostly of the Indian investment focus on the heavy constraint in special cooperation member countries like international experience and are inclined to operate domestically, with only a handful of the luckiest company being interested in doing business overseas. Only the Tata Group and some energy groups have a strong foothold internationally, as smaller companies may find it difficult to join develop projects in the other country or are not prepared to become part of value chain in Southeast Asia due to their limited financial resource and also their knowledge. That's about the challenges. How about the opportunity? The policy, the first one is the trade and investment between India and Mekong countries are low, but there are large potential gains to both from integration as long as it contributes to boosting growth, employment, and resilience, closer integration with Mekong country offer opportunity for India to diversify its export and import and to develop or form the global value chain center in East Asia. For Mekong countries, India offer a large and growing market and could be a source of inward foreign direct investment. Engaging with India is an important part of the strategy of the Mekong country as well. Make in India is an opportunity for the latter to invest more in and trade more in India. Also, there is potential to create value chain in textile between India and Mekong. At this moment, except Thailand, CLMV is currently conducting the lowest segment in global textile and clothing value chain, mostly CMT only. Meanwhile, India is not only good at providing material inputs, but also ensuring printing, ink, and dye CMT before marketing and distributing to the market. I think that is a good one. So that's that is the good feel that India and Mekong country can cooperate together. And the first one is a strong political commitment made by country's government through meeting regional forum has been serving as the cornerstone of growing and growing economic partnership. It's also it's a tool to pave the way for the launch of the new cooperation initiative, reinforce a sense of cohesion and interdependence among countries. I think in the future, the completion of the ongoing connectivity project between India and Mekong, for example, like the extension of the India, Thailand and Myanmar trilateral highway to Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam, will also have to reduce the travel distance, remote bottleneck in the supply chain, and also that increased trade and as well as investment between two sides. And also the less costly labor market along with the immense development potential of Mekong countries offer an important market for India business to implement Make in India campaign. Besides, due to skill gap in existence across Mekong countries, India could deploy its soft power to level up the underdeveloped sectors of these countries. Together with the strength in also the one more point, together with the strength in healthcare infrastructure and quality, India can also help construct affordable healthcare facility in the sub-region, as this sector because this sector has not received adequate attention among FDI provider.
May I disturb you? Could you please wind up now?
Yeah. Okay.
Please conclude.
I just sum up some policy recommendation. Firstly, the unintegrated approach on trade, investment, and development cooperation towards the promote of trade, investment, and development cooperation in Mekong sub-region should be developed. Closer cooperation should be natural and reinforced between India government and Mekong governments. I think this is the first step taken for the sake of an effective institutional framework that can streamline trade and investment flow. Secondly, the construction of a connectivity project should be speed up. A good physical connectivity, good safe vehicle operating costs, and reduce travel times considerably. That's significant boost the movement of goods and people, and also it is imperative to quickly implement infrastructure project that connect city and production city with each other. Thirdly, non-discriminatory treatment between Mekong Ganga cooperation communities is another thing that member government should care for. And also the last one is the country should establish an information sharing information to private sector so that business can easy access and good not missing existing opportunity approach. I think that is the whole my presentation. Thank you, Dr. Chair. Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr.Vo Thi Minh. I'm very glad that you gave us very specific suggestions because you identified the problems like barrier and connectivity, then the SPS for 1,500 products. That is, these are the non-tariff barriers, which are, I think, also one of the constraints in the promotion of trade. Thirdly, Indian companies are not part of the value chains in Southeast Asia. I think that's a very important point. And fourth, textiles. There's a big field of textiles which is still neglected. So I would suggest at the end of this conference, we should have these recommendations, very specific recommendations, all included in the report.
Alo,
And the report should be sent to all governments.
tôi đang có việc
And
kéo một
the
thằng
chambers
nhé,
are
tôi đang
forward.
ngài
Thank you.
mai tôi đi.
Yeah, thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Truong from the
Ok, tôi đang bận cái nhé, đừng có ngại nhé.
Academy of Vietnamese Academy. Dr. Truong Quang Hoan, are you there?
Yes. Good afternoon, all professors.
Yeah.
Can you can all professor hear me?
It will take about 15 minutes, 12 to 15 minutes.
Okay, my presentation does I just want to say some. Can I say this screen? Okay, here. Okay. Okay.
Please.
Could you hear me clearly? Okay. My
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Because my paper today will be about the Indian Mekong countries, the global value chain linkage, with an approach of the trade in value added from OECD and WTO data. Okay, because more of you focus in most of the previous paper, okay, focus on the conventional trade between the Indian and Mekong, but my paper could be a slide different, and I will focus on how the Indian and Mekong countries, particularly Thailand and Vietnam, they have the global value. They have a relation in terms of the GVC linkage. Okay, so I will skip the overview overview the economic relation between Indian and Mekong because the previous scholar presented this already. I just want to emphasize that the trade between India and Mekong countries to the total trade between India and the whole ASEAN has increased impressively over the more than a decade, from just only the 18% to the nearly the 30%. That means that the Mekong country have become important into the whole ASEAN. So country that has been focused more by the Indian, by India companies. The law between whole Mekong, which are focus the India and I will have the global value chain linkage in terms of, for example, how they trade in terms of intermediate goods, how they trade in terms of how they have the contact in terms of the backward participation and the forward participation. Okay. I will skip this because this overview the economic relation between Indian and Mekong countries. And I won't go and Mekong countries linkage. So the first picture is I will look at the status possessions between India and Thailand and Vietnam, because we don't have available data between Indian and Indian export and import with Laos, Myanmar, and Cambodia. So I just compare between Indian trades with Thailand and Vietnam. And also Thailand and Vietnam are the major trading partner of India. So the total result is, I think, is still enough to understand the dynamic the dynamic trade relation between the two sides. So you can see that India export to Thailand mainly, it has reduced in terms of intermediate products and increased in terms of the final products. It means that now India export more the final products to Thailand market. But compared to Vietnam, the picture is totally different. We can see that the intermediate products in India exports to Vietnam is increase and is very high, right? It's about 70%. This means that Vietnam has depended relatively high heavy in terms of the interest from Indian companies, because it is maybe because of the Vietnam doesn't have a strong supporting industries, right? So they have to import a lot of inputs from outside, in this case from India. So the picture between Indian export to Thailand and India export to Vietnam is quite different, okay? Because Thailand has more developed industries, especially the supporting industries. So they do not need to import a lot of intermediates from India. Okay, so in terms of when we go inside that, right? So the India intermediate export to Thailand, Vietnam focus mostly in terms of the chemical and chemical products, and later on is the food products, right? But in terms of in Thailand, India export to Thailand focus mostly on the metal products, so it's quite different. Okay, now we go to the export from Thailand and Vietnam to India by state processing. You can see that here is the figure. The Thailand export to India is focused more on really focused on the intermediate goods, and also in terms of Vietnam is also, but the rate is not high as compared. Maybe it's the percentage is quite similar between Vietnam and Thailand. So the intermediate may play a important role between the India and India trades with Thailand and Vietnam. So it could this fact is like the significant FDI flows, including Indian firms into Thailand and Vietnam in manufacturing sector, and then these foreign firms export intermediate input in this sector to Indian markets for the next state of possession. To some extent, it also demonstrates that Thailand and Vietnam has played a positive role in the regional supply value chain of Indian companies. Now we go to the another aspect of the GVC linkage between India and and Thailand and Vietnam. We first focus on the domestic value-added content in export. We consider domestic value-added content which represents the exported value added that has been generated anywhere in the economy between India and with Thailand and Vietnam. So we can see that the picture shows that the DVA content in Indian export to Thailand and Vietnam has increased very fast over the past decade, right? And India export to Thailand grew from the only 1.5 billion to the 4 billion between 2005 and 2015. Thus, were nearly 80% of Indian total export. This means that the domestic value added play a very important role in total Indian export to India. We also can see the similar picture in terms of the domestic value added content in India export to Vietnam. Okay, so it means that India has localized has had a high localization, right? Because it can produce a lot of products at the home country. I mean the companies, so they do not need to import from outside. That means that the DVA content in India export to Thailand, Vietnam remains very high percentage. This is when we go to sectoral level, the DVA contribution in India export to Thailand and Vietnam, so that the manufacturing had contributed is quite a quite high percentage, right? In India export to Thailand and Vietnam in terms of the domestic value added. Also, we go further by the sector of manufacturing, right? It's also focused on chemical metal production in India export to Thailand and Vietnam. But in terms of the DVA content in exports from Thailand and Vietnam to India is also increased very fast, and we can see that Vietnam has increased very fast in terms of the split, in terms of the rate as compared to Thailand, when as compared to Thailand in DVA export to the India markets, right? It had around 10 times increase in Vietnam DVA export to India as compared to 3 times higher from 3 times increase in Thailand's DVA export to India, right? So the split, the growth in terms the growth in Vietnam export DVA content is much faster as compared to Thailand. Yes, also the picture we see the sector level. We see the manufacturing has contributed a large share in terms of the DVA export from Thailand and Vietnam to India. Okay, we go to the last indicator, that is the backward participation and forward participation. That we see that the backward participation refers to the ratio of the foreign value added content, right? Foreign value added content of the exports to the economies of total gross export. Meanwhile, the forward GDP participation corresponds to the ratio of the DVAs sent to the third economies to the economy's total gross export. It means that it captures the DVA content in inputs sent to the third economies for further processing and export to value chains. So how about the results? We first look at the India in backward participation with Thailand and Vietnam. In other words, we investigate how much of foreign value added oriented by Thailand and Vietnam thus embodies in India export, right? As percentage of India total exports. So in general, backward participation between India and Thailand has a growing tendency. has a growing tendency between 2015 and 2005 and 2015, right? So when looking at the backward participation among major Asian partners with Thailand, backward participation between India and Thailand was lowest. Interestingly, to the foreign value added from Thailand and borrowing China export was still strongest. This figure has remarkable decline over time, possibly indicating a higher local narration of inputs for export activities in Thailand. A similar trend we can observe in the foreign value added from Vietnam in Asian economies. So foreign value added contribution from Vietnam to exports in India were lowest, comparing with foreign value added from Vietnam in export of Taiwan, China, Japan, and Korea. So this trend is understandable as Korea is among the top trading and investor in Vietnam, thanks to FDI flows from Korea. More intermediate goods, particularly computer and electronics inputs, has been produced domestically in Vietnam, and then they are re-exported to Korea for next state possession. Next, the current paper considers the forward participation between India and Thailand and Vietnam. We also see that there was a slight decrease in backward, next we focus on the forward participation, right, between
Dr. Truong, may I request you to wind up now, please?
Okay, I just go to some conclusion. Along with the rapid growth in trade and somewhat investment, India and Mekong countries has more integrated in GVC, allowing the exile to expand its own DVA to export. India and Mekong region have also gained certain results in increasing forward and backward over time. Nevertheless, the India and Mekong countries' trade relations face significant constraints to innovating their export market to allow for the capture of more value addition and to move up the value chain into higher value added function. And on the other side, service contribution in value added in India and Mekong countries remain low by international standard, where forward linkage between the two regions to manufacturing export sector from the backbone service sector necessary for competing industries are weak. And when looking inside the manufacturing sector, India and Mekong countries only engage in the lowest midstream activity in GVCs, such as sub-assembly and finished product, right? So I would like to propose some recommendation that Mekong countries should facilitate domestic companies' entry into the GVC by improving the drivers of investment, especially the functional market, and by improving the functioning and quality of the domestic segment of value chains. And the next one is the checking efforts in the Mekong region limited to the MGC GVC, but soon also aim at large supply from the MNE value chain, right? Actually electronic rely heavily on services. So the two sides should invest in the technically skilled workforce with professional qualifications, and also the additional support service like establishing the R&D institute and quality control that India could contribute to the Asian to the Mekong country in developing R&D institution, and also that the Indian firm, especially the SME, should receive more support from the Indian government as well to have they do business in the in the Mekong countries. And that is some of my point of my presentation, but it is quite long. So my paper is quite long, so I could not present all everything. Thank you for all professors.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Truong. I think you have emphasized the need for Indian and Vietnamese, Indian and Mekong countries to go up the value chain. It cannot be overemphasized. I think that is most important. The role of FDIs and the service sector in this context has to be very carefully thought of, and how we can expand our FDIs both ways, from India to Mekong region as well as from Mekong countries to India. I think that needs promotion, and I think in our report we should highlight these aspects of the GVCs, both the backward and the forward participation. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Dr. Nilanjan Ghosh. He is from the Observers Research Foundation from Kolkata. Over to you, Dr. Ghosh.
Thank you, Chair, sir. A very good afternoon to you all. Let me thank the organizers ICWA and AIC, especially Professor Pranav Thi, for inviting me to write this paper and present it here. This paper has been written with my colleague, Mr. Roshan Shah, who is also a specialist in international trade. Well, just by hearing from the previous speakers, in fact, some very, very interesting points have already emerged out of this discussion. As such, in fact, one very crucial point that emerged is India's apprehensions with the FTAs, as also, in fact, India's withdrawal from the RCEP, which I presume was mentioned by the very first speaker. In fact, it's not always that, of course, one of the very critical elements that we often look at happens to be the balance of trade as far as the trade deficits are concerned. And we always remain worried about wherever trade deficits exist, but especially the bilateral trade deficits or suppose the trade deficits with certain blocks exist. But the fact remains that what often are of more critical concerns happens to be the impacts of these FTAs on the value chain. It's so an FTA or any kind of trade agreement should not only be examined or assessed only through the balance of trade. Of course, that is one of the lenses. It's not that we should be completely ignorant of that. But what happens to be the plausible impact of such a trade agreement on the value chain, commodity value chain, or industries or domestic industry as a whole? It remains to be seen, and that needs to be assessed before. And in fact, if we look at the ASEAN-India FTA, of course, when we are talking about the MGC India, we are talking about, I mean, of course, all the MGC nations happens to be part of the ASEAN. So one very, very critical element is that in fact, when post the 2010 ASEAN-India FTA, what we find is that there is a huge sudden jump in the trade in the ASEAN-India trade deficit. On the other hand, when we look at some of the impacts on the commodities, especially the commodity value chain, what we find is that there have been, especially let me take the example of edible oil sector, large parts of the processing units have to be shut down because the entire consumption pattern in India has moved towards palm oil and soya oil. And this is some kind of a change that we have been, if you look at the consumption that existed in 1991 and the consumption that exists in 2015, you will find a sea change. The basket has completely changed. And this is pure price effect. And more so because cheap imports from Malaysia, Indonesia. Now, when it comes to the MGCs, India's trade with the Mekong countries, of course, increased, as in fact, Chairs has stated right at the beginning, from 1 billion or around 1.7 billion in 2000 to around 24-25 billion in 2019. Although the total value of trade between MGC and India is still very low, it needs to be noted here that it is experiencing the fastest growth in trade relations with India. And not only that, if you look at this block, the share of MGC countries in India's total trade with ASEAN increased from 17% in 2000 to 31% in 2019. Interestingly, of India's total share in trade, when it comes to suppose say which is the driver, which countries, which bloc happens to be the driver of ASEAN-Indian trade, if one looks at it more closely, one will find that between 2010 and 2018, it is the MGCs. So rather, it is here that I would like to state that Vietnam and Thailand, they of course happen to be the largest destination of our Indian exports, followed by Myanmar, Laos, PDR, and Cambodia. And at the very same time, Thailand has been a major source of imports, followed by Vietnam and Myanmar. And in the last 2 years, Vietnam has overtaken Thailand as the major source of imports. And India's export to Vietnam increased by 14% per year over the period 2005-6 and 2019-20. In fact, I have the graphs here with me. It is there in my paper. Since PPTs was discouraged. In fact, that's the notification that I received. So I'm just going to present the broad contours of my findings out here in this particular talk. So the MGC countries are emerging as major partners in the Indian-ASEAN trade relations, and a significant share of India's growth in trade with the ASEAN countries originates from Vietnam and Thailand. This is something that needs to be noted here. And the share of the MGC countries in India's total exports also doubled. In fact, from 1.4% to 3.8% between 2005-6 and 2019-18. Share of MGC countries in Indian total exports. This is from 1.4% to 3.8%. Also, the share of the ASEAN countries in India's total exports, however, they remain constant at 10%. So it's as I stated, that the MGC is the prime driver out here. And during the same period, the MGC countries in India's total imports has more than doubled, in fact, to 3.1% from 1.3%. That is between 2005-6 and 2019-20. Besides Thailand and Vietnam, the other MGC countries account for a very, very small share in total trade with India. So together, in fact, Thailand and Vietnam, they account for 96% of all imports from the MGC countries in 2019-20 and 89% of all exports to MGC countries during the same period, 2019-20. So as I said, the trade relations between the India and the MGC countries, of course, received a fillip only after, in fact, it's the ASEAN-India FTA, which would be stated as the watershed event out here, implemented in 2010. It is not only that there was a sudden spark, whether the FTA was used for the purpose or not, nobody knows, but 2010 turned out to be the watershed year. That there is a sudden spark in the total trade activity between India and ASEAN, driven by India and MGC trade activity. Rather, it made provisions for tariff reductions on 75% of the two-way trade between India and ASEAN, including elimination of tariffs on something around 4,000 products, which included electronics, chemicals, machinery, and textiles. India has a trade deficit of around $2.4 billion with Thailand and around $2.2 billion with Vietnam. However, these should not be taken as the concerns of trade if they are enhancing the productivity of the domestic industry, and that can happen through imports of the intermediaries. Now, they can do two things. First of all, either they can prove to be enhancing the productivity, making the industry much more competitive, or else they can simply invade the market. However, in this case, the major imports of items are both, in fact, both final goods as well as the intermediary goods. A cheaper intermediary product or cheaper inputs often enhance the competitiveness. So now out here, when you look at the major import items from Vietnam, they include the electronic machinery, which is under the HS code 85, while nuclear reactors, boilers, machinery, mechanical appliances, and thereof under the HS code 84, and under HS Code 89 articles thereof, and then natural and cultured pearls, precious and semi-precious stones, HS Code 71, organic chemicals. These are all major imports from Vietnam. From US $7 million in 2005-06 to US $1 billion in 2012-13, and a staggering US $4 billion in 2019-20, imports of electrical machinery from Vietnam has seen a sharp increase. Now, rise in imports from Vietnam, interestingly, coincide with the US-China trade war. Beijing had been searching for markets to divert its excess supply from the US markets. This may have prompted Beijing to reroute some of its exports to India to the ASEAN countries, taking advantage of the FTA between the latter two. This seems to be a very, very critical plausibility. Now, interestingly, India has a trade deficit with the major trading partners, Thailand and Vietnam. It has a trade surplus with Cambodia and a fluctuating trade balance with Laos, PDR, and Myanmar. Now, from here, let me just talk a bit about the investment trends between the India and the MGC. And of course, a supportive FDI environment is needed for the improvement of connectivity and value chains between India and Mekong countries. ASEAN is the most important recipient and also donor of FDI among the selected blocs. FDI inflows into ASEAN reached an all-time high in 2019, with the share of ASEAN in global FDI inflows increasing from 7.9% in 2010 to 11.5% in 2018. Contrary to a high share of intra-regional investment among ASEAN, the share of intra-regional investment in MGC is very low, suggesting a huge potential. Of course, there's a huge potential for FDI inflows into the sub-region of MGC. Among the MGC countries now, India accounts for the highest inflow of FDI, followed by Vietnam and Thailand. Although FDI inflow into Cambodia has been increasing since 2000, it only accounts for a very small share of the total FDI into MGC. Similarly, Laos, PDR, and Myanmar have experienced a decline in the FDI inflows since 2018. Now, if you look at the MGC countries, excluding India, in total FDI inflows into ASEAN between 2015-19, it is between 18 to 25%. The MGC countries constitute only 1/5 of the total investments into the ASEAN countries. In order to become a major regional economic hub, these countries require larger flow of FDI into the region, no doubt about that. But if an ASEAN plus India composite regional investment bloc is considered, then MGC countries account for 38 to 40% of the total FDI coming into ASEAN. This highlights the importance of the MGC countries as an important investment destination in the region, and there is immense scope for further expansion of the investment potential from within the region and from external sources. So India needs to assert itself as the driver of FDI inflows in the region, similar to the role that Singapore is playing for the ASEAN nations.
Now conclude, please.
Sure.
Could you please conclude? Yes.
Sure, I'll do that. So now, interestingly, because of this COVID in the post-pandemic world, now South and Southeast Asian nations, many of them also part of the MGC sub-regional grouping, find themselves at the center of this competitive environment for attracting the FDI outflux from China. Post-2008 GFs, now interesting as we find, in fact, moving out in the footwear industry, 7.5% has been the Chinese loss in the global market share, and 5.9% has moved to Vietnam. In the ceramics industry, 6% is the loss to China, 1% of that has moved to India. In the apparel industry, out of 5.8% is the Chinese loss, and 50%, that is 2.9%, has moved to Vietnam. So this has been happening across leather, iron and steel, pearls, furniture, and all across. Now, importantly, let me just come to this, that it is important that the MGC should present itself as a consolidated block for investment, for attracting investment. It would have been, in fact, RCEP was initially conceived of as an ASEAN plus 6 deal, kind of an FTA, but MGC would have been a critical part of this mega trade deal. Now, RCEP was hypothesized to facilitate the entry process of India's MSMEs into the GVCs, but there are n number of inefficiencies in the Indian labor markets, low productivity. Our taxation regime, especially the GST and others, still needs its own ways of reforms. The transaction costs of compliance are very high. So, in fact, it would have been very, very difficult for India to plug into the ASEAN value chain to that extent and would have been competitive enough. But the MGC presents a less steep challenge in this context, presents itself, it can easily present itself as an integrated bloc for trade and investment by developing a congenial business environment in a synergistic manner. Now, in a very recent paper by us at ORF, by me, Roshan Shah and Shoma Momik, we presented that there is a two-way causality between SDG achievement and business competitiveness or ease of doing business. Now, government policies should aim towards SDGs and send positive signals to investors regarding the governance structures. Except for Vietnam and Thailand, the MGC countries have rankings below 100 in both SDG index and World Bank's ease of doing business. Now, Vietnam, Thailand, and India are also the countries with the highest FDI inflows among the MGC countries. So, MGC members, all they need to do is to make an integrated effort towards the promotion of the SDGs. By promoting SDGs, you are essentially promoting your natural capital, you are actually promoting your human capital, you're promoting a social capital, and of course, finally, the physical capital. So all these factors the 4K factors are extremely important for attracting the FDI and facilitate the process of a post-pandemic economic recovery. Thank you. That's my conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ghosh. I think you have made a number of very important points in a very knowledgeable manner. I think what you said initially, the impact of FTAs on value chain, I think that has to be understood and not just only thought of in terms of balance of trade. And MGC as an integrated investment block destination, I think if we can have that, of course, would require also a lot of political consideration. I think that kind of investment destination would have helped countries of MGC a great deal in attracting investment, which is now being moved away from China. I think these are some of the very I hope they'll be all incorporated in the report appropriately. Our next speaker is Dr. Pranav Kumar. You have the floor, sir. He is the Chief of the International Trade Policy and CLMV Business Unit of CII. So you are very much hands-on on this CLMV business. Please.
Thank you very much.
15 minutes, please.
Yeah, I will restrict to that time, sir. Thank you very much, Chairman. And before I begin my presentation, let me also thank ICWA, Indian Council of World Affairs, AIC, RIS, for giving me this opportunity to present the business perspective, particularly in this very important discussion on Mekong Ganga economic cooperation. And this is really a landmark year, that 20 years. But unfortunately, this 2020 is completely washed out because of the COVID-19 impact. And that is really very, very sad for all of us. Otherwise, it would have been a big initiative, both on the part of India and the Mekong countries. Lot of very important points have already been expressed, starting from the first presentation by Dr. Dutta on particularly on the Mekong Ganga action, Mekong MGC action plan, of course, which is very comprehensive in terms of sectoral coverage, in terms of the initiatives which are proposed to deepen the India-Mekong economic relations, and followed by very good analysis on trade and investment between India and Mekong countries. And of course, a lot of discussion also took place on the global value chain, and that is extremely important. Let me try to add from the business side, and I would not like to repeat what has already been said. And there is no doubt that Mekong region, and particularly CLMV countries, the Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, these countries have acquired a special focus, not only in the scheme of things of government of India, plus also industry, from the point of view of investment or trade, or from the development cooperation, which is very important, because I think one point that wasn't discussed so far, that 3 of the Mekong countries are LDCs: Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia. And India has always been very supportive towards least developed countries in helping in integrating those economies into Indian economy. And that's why India has granted duty-free tariff preference scheme, duty-free tariff preference also concession to these 3 LDCs. So, but if you look at the trade data particularly, and in the last 5 years, 2015 to 2019-20, except in case of Vietnam and Thailand, we see some increase. Of course, Vietnam, our import has increased and export has been stagnant. But in case of Myanmar, I see the export has been stagnant in the last 5 years. Import has come down. With Laos, the import has drastically, the export has also come down, import has also come down. With Cambodia, almost import remained stagnant in the last 5 years. With Thailand, of course, import has increased and export has also increased. But overall, if you see the trade figure between India and the 5 of the Mekong countries, the trade has been more or less stagnant. There has not been very sharp increase in the last 5 years, in spite of the fact that we have free trade agreement with these countries, in spite of the fact that India has given duty-free tariff preference to 3 of the LDCs. So somewhere we are seeing that these kind of institutional mechanism which we have developed and the preferences we have granted, the initiatives taken by Government of India have not excited the businesses from the region particularly to further deepen the trade and economic relations. And that is extremely critical for us to analyze and see what we can do to deepen the trade and investment relations. So one point which we have witnessed, particularly from the Indian industry point of view, and more so from the Government of India point of view, that we are always looking trade and investment in 2 watertight compartments. If investment will happen, then only trade will happen. Investment is a vehicle for trade. Investment is a vehicle for export and import. So that point we have to, that's why when we talk about trade, it has to be discussed in the context of investment. That's why we are talking about global value chain and all. Because global value chain, it's about investment, it's about trade, it's about trade facilitation, it's about standard compliance. A lot of harmonizations are required. So on the one hand, on institutional front, we have moved forward. India-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, duty-free tariff preference scheme, very strong development cooperation initiative from Government of India, lines of credit by Exim Bank of India, Export-Import Bank of India. In 2015-16, government has also created a project development fund that also did not increase the investment from India. So all these requires very serious examination, analysis, what went wrong, in spite of so many initiatives, so much involvement from the government and from both the sides. The businesses from 2 sides have not been able to take it forward, leverage the true potential of the trade and economic relations. From the Indian industry point of view, what we have seen over the last at least 7-8 years, we have a very strong institutional mechanism. Every second year, we organize the CLMV conclave, India, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and that is being organized with the support of Department of Commerce. And that is, of course, trying to identify the projects in these CLMV countries, and also trying to extend help, particularly in terms of information, in terms of explaining the governmental schemes and all funding and all opportunities for the industry. And this year also we are organizing this conclave though virtually on 3rd and 4th of December. And I look forward to participation from the Mekong countries. The second point is, if you look at the sectors are very diverse, and that has been explained also. In fact, that is also in the Mekong Ganga action plan, whether it's the tourism, whether it's connectivity, infrastructure, digital economy, renewable energy, and all these sectors where we see a lot of potential from the Indian industry. But somehow, as I said, that we are not seeing much enthusiasm from the Indian industry. And one thing we have to understand here, and that again in the context of the kind of the policy discourse and the policy initiatives and which have been taken in terms of our engagement with the rest of the world through free trade agreements. Both Indian industry and from the government of India, we are losing appetite for free trade agreements, which has been the major driver for integration of the two economies, integration of the two regional economies. We have insisted for review of free trade agreement with ASEAN, with Japan, with Korea. We have withdrawn from RCEP. We are not moving ahead with other countries, whether with Australia or New Zealand, with Europe, America, and all. So that is kind of giving a very, I won't say bad, but of course some kind of negative signal to the global investor. And one factor we have to understand that in majority of the Indian companies are not very well internationalized, unless Chinese companies over the last 10 years or so. Japanese, of course, Korean, they all major economic giants in terms of whether Samsung or Hyundai or Honda and Nissan, those Japanese companies. So Indian companies need support from the government, need those kind of institutional mechanism. Those institutional mechanisms are in place, but of course that has to be understood in a very right spirit. For instance, I give an example of, for instance, most of the FTAs, though my previous speaker, Nilanjan, also mentioned about free trade agreement in the ASEAN. So we always talk about and assess the impact of free trade agreement in terms of export and import. For instance, if you take the case of Japan, why we should be bothered about our deficit with Japan? We should be bothered about how much investment we have been able to attract from Japan. How much investment we have been able to attract from Korea. Those are your source of investment. If investments are coming, of course, some import will happen. That is fair enough. But Japanese investment, they will come, manufacture, export hub, and they export to other parts of the world. But somehow we have confined and taking a very narrow perspective of free trade agreement. And that's why the whole debate about global value chain and regional value chain is completely missing or completely misdirected in our case. So when we talk about India Mekong Ganga cooperation, of course, many of the Chinese companies, many of the Indian companies, many of the Japanese, Korean companies, they are leading the value chain. So we have to find a way how we can integrate with those value chain. And for those integration, what we need to do, we have to have a right kind of trade policy. So trade policy has to enable our integration to value chain. But currently what we are witnessing in India, a lot of emphasis on the import curve. We have seen that we are identifying products where we can increase duty. We are bringing products under licensing category. So all these are not helpful in terms of when we talk about integration with the rest of the world. So that has to be understood. So this is the overall framework. But what I would recommend in particularly with regards to a CLMV region, in terms of some recommendations. So, and I have emphasized that since development cooperation is a very important pillar of our association with these countries. So trade, investment and development cooperation, we have to follow an integrated approach. Because when we talk about lines of credit, when we talk about project development fund, and all those have to facilitate and support our deepening of economic relation with this region. We have to build the institutional capacity, so that if we build the institutional capacity, that will help Indian private sector. As I mentioned, that those are not, Indian companies are not very well internationalized, and when they have to compete with the giants, global giants in this region, so they need a lot of hand holding and support. So that is very important. Third factor is the treatment of Indian companies in these regions. And as I said, that particular three LDCs, Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia, in spite of the very deep access they have got, in deep preference they have got into the Indian market, they have not been able to increase the exports to India. And that has also not attracted these countries to attract global investment or regional investment, particularly Chinese companies or Japanese companies or Indian companies. So somewhere these countries also have to see what kind of investment regime they have to offer to Indian companies, so the Indian companies can go there, invest, manufacture, and make use of the preference they have got in Indian market. So these are some of the very broad recommendations I would like to make, and I look forward to, since most of the points have already been covered, so I look forward to discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pranav Kumar. I think you have touched upon some very fundamental issues by observing that the trade between MGC countries and India in the last 5 years is more or less stagnant. I think you have touched upon, you have brought forth the basic problem, why, and then you are referring it to or connecting it with our increasing disinterest in the FTAs. All these needs to be really introspected now within the government, within the Commerce Ministry, as well as CII and other chambers of commerce. I think trade, development, and investment should be part of the integrated approach. I think goes, is well accepted, although we do not follow it. In the case of Mekong Ganga countries, I think this will be essential, because unless there is government support to the industry and business, we will not be able to really make progress. And when the potential in this region is so good, and we have competition from China and other countries in this region, we have to stand up to the same challenges that other countries also would be facing. So thank you so much. Your recommendations, I think we should make part of the total recommendation from this seminar to the government as well as to the business. Our last but not the least speaker is Dr. Temjen, and may I call upon you. I had the pleasure of listening to you when you spoke on Indonesia some time back. I would like to hear your views now on the MGC. Dr. Temjen.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, a very good afternoon. So just picking up on what the Chair and some of the speakers have been mentioning on the significance and the need to conclude the ongoing connectivity between India and the region. It rises from the perspective that in order to have an inclusive growth, connectivity is fundamental, because it not only has a long-term economic development and growth, but it also has a real as well as potential impact on all the countries that are part of the connectivity network. This is why India has consistently maintained that the connectivity with ASEAN is central to its AIC policy. And it has also built its connectivity agenda in line with the master plan on ASEAN connectivity 2025. In regards to the MGC, we have the trilateral highway, which establishes connectivity between India, Myanmar, and Thailand. And as already mentioned, it is an ongoing process, and it is yet to reach its full potential in order for us to make a proper assessment of its real impact. A major part of the trilateral highway, as you are well aware, passes through Myanmar, and while many of the original alignments that includes upgradation and construction of certain roads have been completed more recently. There are also a large part of physical infrastructure that includes bridges as well as roads that needs to be upgraded and resurfaced, and this would require financial assistance from all the partnering countries. So the proposed extension of the trilateral highway into the other Mekong countries, that includes Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, would not only help expand the economic engagement, but also it will help bring further development and growth into the region. The eastward expansion of the trilateral highway would provide a seamless transport corridor, which apart from the various other advantages, would also help reduce the marginal cost, and in turn it will help spur economic activities across the region. So while it is important that we build on connectivity, it is also and undertake necessary institutional arrangement to facilitate cross-border transport. It is not at all the sufficient condition, because it also needs to be accompanied by various other reforms and policies that need to be taken into place. As mentioned by Mr. Pranav, one being we need to undertake the necessary trade policy reform. Apart from that, there's also the need for the individual Mekong Ganga country to look into developing industrial policies that would encourage certain industry and manufacturing base within the region. There's also the need towards developing or reorienting the developmental policies in order to push certain cities, such as making them the business and the logistic hub that would that are well connected to the other road networks, which are part of the other economic corridors or are well connected to the other modes of transportation. Another key determinant towards ensuring a growth is to ensure that there is a stable, and a secure environment, because one of the major prerequisites to improve business and economic sentiment is the need towards having a secure and a stable environment, because this would in turn encourage businesses to grow as well as encourage movement of people, goods and services. Therefore, the eastward expansion of the trilateral highway, while it presents huge opportunities, it is also important that the MGC needs to remove the various bottleneck and also reorient the various developmental strategies, which is quite important, and especially in a post-pandemic period, which in a way has reminded the world about the vulnerabilities of the existing global supply chain. And there is a need and a requirement to strengthen the long-term supply chain, which is resilient at the same time sustainable. Therefore, the MGC, through the MGC, there is a need towards deepening the partnership, which will help build a framework to adapt to a post-pandemic period, as it also presents enormous opportunity, as mentioned by various speakers, in terms of strengthening the intra-regional trade, as well as helping the region get further integrated into the global value chain. And in order for this to happen, it needs to be supported by a robust network of connectivity, which would help for the free movement of goods and services. So as we move into the third decade of the MGC, in my paper, I also wrote on the need for a further diversification and a more comprehension in terms of the partnership, as it would be necessary to adapt as well as transition into the fourth industrial revolution, which today is becoming of a fast reality. The fourth industrial revolution, which is being driven by extraordinary technological advances and the application of AI and the Internet of Things, is in a way breaking the firewall that existed between the virtual and the physical world. So as we are today in the cups of the fourth industrial revolution, it requires resilience as well as the adaptability to help transition. And given that the fourth industrial revolution does provide enormous potential to improve the quality of life, as well as increase the income level for all by building an economically sustainable growth, in terms of economic benefits, for instance, the internet is already building a sharing economy where there is the exchange of ideas at almost zero marginal cost. In terms of sustainability, for instance, if we have the application of renewable energy such as solar, wind, and geothermal, while there is the initial fixed cost for introducing these technologies, the marginal cost is zero because there is no production cost involved. So in all this, the connectivity which we are witnessing today is also witnessing a major transformation, and it would become even more crucial in the coming decades in order to manage power and move economic life. There is a need to further deepen this partnership as the fourth industrial revolution continues to become a reality, and as we are today witnessing an increasing convergence in the three internets: the communication internet, the renewable energy internet, and the automatic logistic internet. The positive externality of this convergence is that since these three internets are right on top of the platform called the Internet of Things, it would help connect everything with everyone across the globe at a very low cost and help build direct engagement, which would enable more openness and more collaboration rather than the existing closed and proprietary system. Not taking much time, and as much more, so much more has been covered, I would just leave some of the other points that I have covered, but I would just come to the conclusion by just saying that in terms of connectivity, when we look into the third decade, it is important that we build amongst the MGC a wide network of collaboration, because in order to address the post-pandemic period and to help transition into the fourth industrial revolution, it would require greater collaboration as well as a greater number of players to engage with. Therefore, the path for the MGC in the third decade would be to condition the partnership so that it is able to build a partnership which is based on inclusivity as well as resilience in order to manage efficiently not only the socio-economic fallout of the pandemic, but also to further advance the partnership and help transition and ensure that the real socio-economic benefits that the fourth industrial revolution has to offer is realized. With this, I would end, and I would be happy to answer during the Q&A more on this. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Temjen. I think connectivity is the key. But I would say that connectivity has to be comprehensive nature, because it will have to be beyond the road connectivity and the logistic connectivity. We'll have to have marine connectivity, we'll have to have cyber connectivity, air connectivity, and I think importantly, connectivity of minds. And that is possible today because of the Industrial Revolution 4 and 3 internets. So in a way, we are in a very fortunate position that there is a mechanism available now to build that kind of connectivity among the peoples. And when the two civilizations represented by the rivers Mekong and Ganga could have that kind of interchange of ideas and thoughts centuries ago, I believe that today it should be relatively easy and well within the realm of possibility. So we have a very rich exchange of thoughts and ideas and views on economic relations between MGC and MGC. I'm sure there will be some questions or observations. I don't think we have much time. 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes? But those who have questions, please, I think there is a mechanism to ask question. You please guide the group.
So there are some questions in the chat.
So please, do I see that question? I can't see that.
You have to click on the chat.
I have to
click on the chat.
Hi, Dr. Che. Can I have a question?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yes. Overall, thank you very much for whole presentation today. And it seems to me that we have also common thinking like example like the issue related to the connectivity. That is the main issue to upgrade the cooperation between Mekong Ganga Cooperation and India and Mekong region. And also the second one, we also find out the same common is the barriers to trade in the form of non-tariff measure and poor connectivity infrastructure, as Dr. Ghosh raised. And also we find out that maybe after post COVID-19, the raise maybe the rise of the protectionism trade policy also maybe occur in some countries. So that is and also the shipping in supply chain in the not only in India but also in Mekong countries as well. And also I have one question with for Dr. Dutta. Dr. Dutta, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, we are talking a lot. We are talking a lot about the economic corridor. For example, like East-West economic corridor. But naturally, it as I see, I think that it is beginning. It is transport corridor only. But now you suggest that we should plug the missing link for the extension of the Mekong India economic corridor, right? So how we can transform from the Mekong India transport corridor into economic corridor? Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to respond, please? Yeah.
Yeah, and also how we can merge between Mekong India economic corridor with CPTA. It means cross border transport agreement. Yeah, to promote the cooperation between Mekong Ganga Mekong Ganga cooperation and Mekong countries. Yeah, that is my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.Vo Thi Minh, for your question. I think it's a difficult one, but I will try to attempt. Well, basically on the connectivity, I will look into from the IMT, Indo-Myanmar, Thailand, the highway that has been much talked about and already a delayed project. But nevertheless, this project will be launched in a couple of years. No, on a few, things are being to be negotiated. But my point here is, as to respond to your query, we will have the hard infrastructure, that is a transport corridor. In GMS, we had the transport corridor. Then it moved into stages up to the economic corridor. For IMT, it's still in transport because there are soft issues which need to be addressed. As we link with the CBTA, the GMS CBTA, cross-border transport agreement, it is also like 20 years of hard negotiation between the countries. And it is yet to take off. And now at the moment, we have the early harvest implementation of the CBTA. Similar will be the issue for the Indo-Myanmar transport highway because it is transiting through Myanmar. There will be issues on the softer part, maybe on the truck movements, on the load factor of the truck, the trailers, the exchange of the goods, the signs, road signs, training to the drivers, all these things. Then we have this Motor Vehicle Act, which is still in the negotiation. And that I see that it will take long time because in a similar fashion like the CBTA, So to make the transport corridor, you may have a road, there exists a road from Tamu down to your, method, there is already existing road and interconnecting links. But making trucks to come from India up to Thailand, it will require a lot of soft issues on the transport facilitation at the borders. And those, issues need to be adequately addressed now because you have the investment from India, $millions on the infrastructure on bridges and the road. in Myanmar, it may not take off to engage on trade and trade relations, because unless and until you address these issues. That was my suggestion when we had a meeting couple of months ago. I mentioned this more categorically because you build on the infrastructure, the hard infrastructure. At the same time, you also need to negotiate, and this is a hard negotiation. Who will pay for the maintenance of the roads when you are plying the trucks between India and Thailand, probably through Vietnam? Vietnam, even a lot of trucks may move. So these are some issues there. So that negotiation could be a hardest part to achieve. But let us look from the positive angle. So CBTA, we have come into different stages. Now you can see 500 truck permits from each of the Mekong countries are being issued. Vietnam, Thailand, China, they have already issued the permits. Trucks are moving between the countries, so things will happen, and definitely we can take a lot of lessons from this kind of agreements, like the cross-border transport agreement of GMS. Second point.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other question? Oh, you are answering our second point. Okay.
Okay, so it's okay. Okay, done. I don't want to
Yes.
If key message is given.
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I think we are already running. Another question? Hello? Are there any other questions?
So
Yes.
there
So
are two
I would like to hand over to the organizer. Yes, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I just have how can I say? I just wonder that how we can how the Mekong
Yeah, go ahead,
Ganga,
please.
how the Mekong Ganga cooperation could compare to the other initiative between Mekong region with external partners like the Mekong with China, Mekong with India, Mekong with Japan, and Mekong with Korea. So how the Mekong India, the Mekong Ganga initiative, they could find the how can I say, the unique the charm point, to develop, especially in terms of collectivity, because a lot of the collectivity initiative has been have been launched in the Mekong regions, and in terms of their financial resources. Also, India also had, I think, is at that time is not very in very not very good position as compared with the China and Japan. Okay, so how the Mekong Ganga initiative should develop and should, in comparison with the other mechanisms that Mekong region have now. Thank you.
Would Dr. Pranav Kumar like to answer this? Or
I think this is comparing
whosoever would
Mekong.
like to comment on that?
I think this is comparing Mekong Ganga with other. Mr. Dutta is a better place to answer this question.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Dutta is, I think, well placed. Yeah, please.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Pranav. Dr. Truong, as I mentioned, that these other sub-regional cooperation frameworks, almost we have 14 in the Mekong region. I think for MGC, Mekong Ganga, all these years, it was more on the cultural aspects, and the visibility was more, from the cultural perspective, not much on the economic part. So of late, in the recent time, the economic agenda has been put in place. And as you mentioned about Mekong Korea or Mekong Japan, Mekong China, this has been quite active. They are very recent initiatives. China, as I said, 3-4 years ago. Korea is since 2015. Japan was there since the early of the 20s. But the money they have pledged, it is for the Mekong countries, and their position in the Mekong. But in Mekong Ganga cooperation, it is remote from New Delhi. For example, Mekong Korea Cooperation Framework. they have annual contribution grant for the Mekong countries up to $3 million that is put here in a secretariat in Mekong. For Japan, they have nearly, say, 30 to 40 million for Mekong under the Mekong framework, Mekong Japan. That is with the AMEC secretariat in Bangkok, ASEAN Economic Ministers, secretariat here. Same is the case with Lanchang Mekong, So if you look, then Lower Mekong Initiative from US. So these initiatives are, I would say, operating from the Mekong countries. But for Mekong Ganga, this is from the Ministry of External Affairs with few agencies there. So I think that pattern need to change so that we can have more visibility of what government of India is initiating with the Mekong country. Second, I think the rigorous engagement of these mechanisms with different institutions, that is also need to be seen by the government of India, because it is not through a university or a research think tank. You can see the active working groups from the sectors, then the regular meetings of the sectoral groups, and then you have the working group, then you have the senior officials meetings, then you have the ministerial meeting, then the summit, So these are very active in their engagement, So they have a separate division. Like we also, India also have this Ganga Mekong division in each of these focal point in each of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But I interact very closely with them, so I know what is going on. They see that India is very quiet in most of the cases. Sorry to say that. I'm an Indian, but I'm living and working in this region for last 18 years.
Okay.
So I want also that India deeply engaged. And I'm very happy that this seminar is, we are given this open forum to talk, If you have a government representative, definitely I will not open up like this. So we have Pranav, we have Mr. Dr. Ghosh, and all of the research think tanks here. It's these kind of forums we should have on regular basis. And I would suggest the good recommendation coming from the speakers, if the organizers can come out with this report and kind of a policy brief, given to the ministerial meetings, when the Mekong Ganga ministerial meeting, I think, is likely to have be held online sometime end of this year, and this recommendation reaches them. It's not that it remained as an academic or a seminar output. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dutta. Very useful suggestions. Very good.
Thank you,
Dr. Temjen, please.
Thank you, Chair. Before we
I would
end,
like to for excellent presentations and coming up with very concrete and useful recommendations. I think this was really required, and we had very open and frank discussion, as Mr. Dutta just now testified to. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Temjen, just to before you end, one message from my side. I congratulate all the speakers and the chairpersons for nicely putting up the discussion, and I thank all of them coming today. This very important session. Last but not the least, may I request all the speakers, Dr. Ghosh, Dr. Quang Truong, Dr.Vo Thi Minh, Madhurjya Dutta, and Pranav Kumar, and Temjen yourself as well, to give us a final version of the paper, because as you said, and I've been telling all of them that we will have to bring a book. That's another mandate given to us by ICWA. So kindly revise based on the discussions today and give it us. I will send you a separate mail on that, a separate instruction. But please, we're looking forward to your revised and final paper very soon. Thank you very much for myself. Then Jim, please.
Professor, are there any deadline on that, or you're going to send all those information?
Through email. Yeah, I'm sending it through an email. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair, for moderating the session. And I think it was a very insightful and a very interesting session. Just hearing from all of the other speakers, even I think I learned a lot and got a lot of insight into the subject matter as well. So we would conclude for today, and we would have our session starting tomorrow at 9:30 Indian Standard Time. So we request all of you and all the other audience to kindly join as well. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very